here's what we do here for anyone coming in from Ivan's Raid or just stopping by. We actually read published philosophy. So this is a puzzle about weak belief, and this is by Joshua Edward Pearson. In analysis, it says forthcoming. Looks like Joshua Edward Pearson is out of MIT. So yeah. And as always, it's my first time reading it. I'm not endorsing it. We just read it to see what's good about it, bad about it, and we try to figure it out. Police too much information, yeah. And so this makes it very hard. Everything we do, in some sense, is a simplification, an abstraction, some sort of idealization. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth telling anyone. If I just said, look, all right, pencil. You understand more about pencil, but if I'm just otherwise I can just point to it. It's okay, what does that do for you, though? Ooh, pencil. What does that do? If I say pencil, I say orange pencil. Well, yes, this is an orange pencil, but the color is not uniformly orange. It's got some writing on it. It's got some metal. It's got some other stuff. It's scraped in spots. So it's calling it an orange pencil is already a simplification of what it is. So it's yeah, it's pencil that has orange in some spots. It's a certain color of orange, not maybe not just whatever standard orange is, whatever that might be. Who knows? But yeah, so things are just the nature of our speech, what we're doing does not actually capture the world. Pepper says, yeah, all language is stereotyping. Yes, significantly so. Socrates is a cycle of life, a circle we see it every day. People die and they get born and it happens again and again. Yeah, I mean, that's one metaphysics, is to see things in this sort of process theory. And so it seems seems like that's where you're heading today, is you've got this process theory of stuff. You're saying, okay, this happens and that happens, then it repeats. So you're in a process metaphysics at the moment. What's up, Nitro? What are the odds of a single rule being picked out of an infinite rule of, if a universe can hold anywhere between 0 and infinite rules, what are the odds that there is a rule that says God must exist? Okay, we can make up whatever rule we want. So I can make up a rule that says God must exist. What would that, you're not picking that out of anywhere. We're making that up out of our history of understanding things in the world and gods and rules. Well, that's not picked out of anywhere. So what do you mean? It's not we have an infinite bag with infinitely many sentences that we're just reaching into and grabbing. That's not how things are in our world. We have a history, we have a lot of stuff, so we're really not picking out of infinite rules. And even if that was, we could just, you're picking sentences, putting stuff together a million monkeys banging away on a million typewriters. The idea that, it's an actual rule, why would the universe be set up in terms of rules like that, and why would we pick it like that? So it's an odd question, and so, it seems we'd be in some sort of cosmic lottery that I wouldn't say exists. Why would that sort of thing exist? Pepper says, there are 100 different types of scissors, but if someone says the word, you'll only think of the one most familiar to you. Yeah. It's we have a history here, and there's a reason why we only you can think of a lot of stuff, but we're not thinking of random things. It's Viper says, think scissors, think pink elephant. It's okay, but why did I even say pink elephant? That's a known example that gets said a lot of times. You can pick out a lot of stuff, but chances are these things go by probabilities. They go by histories. There's a psychology to this. We know that. You're just trying to help those out. You see things in chat. Yes, no, it makes sense. It's there's different ways of looking at these problems. There always are. So it's you're getting yourself into process philosophy. But anyway, this is a puzzle about weak belief. So here we go. And as always, feel free to ask me questions along the way. Dumbo, always Dumbo, yeah. And let's go. All right, so this is Joshua presents an intractable puzzle for the currently popular view that belief is weak. The view that expressions like S believes P ascribe to S a doxastic attitude towards P that is rationally incompatible with low credence at P, defended by all these people. So yeah, so if I say I believe the moon is made of green cheese, that just means that there is some low probability that the moon is made of green cheese. So, and they say there's a bunch of people that say it, but the view has not escaped criticism. But the critique offered here is unique, focusing on issues concerning beliefs in conditionals. I show that proponents of weak belief either cannot consistently apply their preferred methodology when accommodating beliefs in conditionals, or they must deny that beliefs in conditionals can be used in reasoning. Section 2 reviews data motivating, then outlines the recent promising theory of weak belief defended by Holguin. Section 3 argues Holguin's theory generates implausible predictions about concerning conditionals, and that natural replies to this problem prevent rational agents from using conditionals they believe in reasoning. Section 4 outlines the puzzling general terms that any theory of weak belief must answer. Stockton says, I think with materialism, it is the Marxist in you. Yeah, so this is where you're getting it. You're going to get like a dialectical theory of, so it's like going back and forth, like going around in circles, but like you're seeing how does materialism evolve over time in places. So yeah, gonna get a dialectic going. Okay. So the thesis that belief is weak is usually motivated via felicity judgments concerning various belief descriptions. Hawthorne observes that it sounds perfectly reasonable to express a belief in P, whilst denying that one has a strong doxastic attitude towards P. So you believe it will rain, but you're not sure that it will rain. That makes sense. Like you think there's a possibility, but you're not like super confident in it. Moreover, if one has a low credence that P, expressions of belief can nevertheless sound unobjectionable. If horse A has a 60% chance of winning, but B and C have 20%, 2 sounds fine. So I believe that A will win. Yeah, so that's the 60% one. 2 can sound fine even if A has less than 50% likely to win. For example, if A has 40 and B and C only 30. According to Holguin, 2 sounds fine even when A's chances of winning is arbitrarily low, so long as A remains the favorite. Yeah, so you could say like, look, if something has only 10%, but everything else only has 1%, then it's like it might have a 10 times more likelihood to win, even though it's 90% chance of losing. Stockton says, contradiction is key to parsing out the lies before our very eyes, and is better to, I believe, too. Yeah. He's British. Yeah, not surprised. Yeah, so yeah, Stockton's on that Hegel grind. And I've said it before, I still think Hegel has a lot of relevancy for 21st century philosophy. I don't think we have exhausted Hegel and the things that Hegel has in metaphysics. So I know like Hegel is not everyone's cup of tea, but I still think it's worthwhile. Frank says, people say this about belief, that it makes sense to say you believe in the likely 40% likely event. Well, they were saying that in the specific case, like you believe the horse that has the highest probability to win will, so I believe that horse with the highest probability will win, even if it's less than 50%. So they're saying that this is, it sounds okay, according to this person, Holguin. Now, you are right to criticize them because it seems like, well, it's a 60% chance that they will lose. And I would say, well, then it doesn't sound like that. But if someone was like to pin you down and say, Frank, who's got the best chance of winning? You'll say, I think that one will win then. So if someone's twisting your arm, maybe you'll go with the one less than 50%, even though clearly they have a better chance of losing then. You never would? Okay, fair enough. I think you're right about that. But like you could also see why you're saying, okay, the horse with the greatest chance, even if it's less than 50%, still might give you, like, you might not say will win, but it gives you the best odds, which is true. And then like people are just like loosely speaking when they say they think it'll win. Yeah, I mean, I got you, Frank. Like, I think like it's just loose speak is what is going on here. People are saying they think it'll win when they really mean it just has the best odds, even though it's clear that it does not have very good odds. Latvian says, the true essence will get teased out eventually, bro. Trust me, it's gonna get there. Just keep negating. The country will reveal the essence. I swear to God, bro. Yo, I'm fine. Why do you ask? Yeah. And Viper's like, yeah, very British. Okay. Yep. Stockton says, listen, Hegel is still yet to be understood, like his works are still yet to be interpreted because his writing is quite difficult, even for philosophers. Well, that is true. His writing is difficult. Yeah. So I think Frank is actually right. We're already getting ourselves into some general inaccuracies and loose talk already at the start of this paper. And that is a little worrisome, but then again, the author is criticizing this view, so he may just be setting these people up for failure. Frank says, if you twist my arm, you'll get me to name a percentage chance. Yeah. So, but like, this also may be a setup, as I'm saying. Like, the author, these are the people the author doesn't like. So, we'll see. We'll see where they're going with this. Proponents of the weak belief thesis argue that the felicity of 1 and 2 is strong evidence that believing P is rationally compatible with low credence of that thing. I will not object to this style of argument here. See someone else for a more thorough defense of it. However, it's important to note that if we do endorse this style of argument, further data concerning the felicity of belief ascriptions highlights additional features of rational beliefs our preferred theory should capture. Okay, so they're just like, this is what people believe, just take their word for it. Meh, whatever. Alright, as Holguin observes, it sounds bizarre to express beliefs that fail to be closed under deduction. So 3, and it, just so you know, if you see these little pound symbols or the whatever it is, hashtag, that means that the author is indicating that this sentence should sound funny or sounds funny to them or wrong to them. So this is, whenever you see these little hash marks in front of a sentence in this area, it means that this sentence is going to, there's something wrong with it. So 3, I believe both Alice will come to the party and that Bob will, but it's not as if I believe both of them will come to the party. 4, I think Alice will come to the party, and if Alice will, so will Bob, but I hardly think Bob will come to the party. Okay, so you can see, if you say one will come and the other won't come, but then you don't believe that both of them will come, or you think if Alice comes and Bob's comes, but then, and you think Alice comes, then you don't think Bob's going to come, and you got the failure of modus ponens. Okay. Moreover, as Holguin notes, it is highly plausible that rational agents can come to think that a proposition is true by deducing it from other propositions they already think are true. Should our theory therefore predict that rational beliefs are closed under deduction? It's unclear. Further data supports the contrary. Suppose Bond is 40% likely in London, 30% likely in Munich, and 30% likely in Berlin. If asked what country Bond is in, it is reasonable to respond, I believe Bond is in Germany. If asked what city Bond is in, you might say, I believe Bond is in London. Yeah, Frank says all these statements can be clarified by way of naming the percentages. Yeah, and you can see what's going on right here. I know you wrote that before I read this bit, but you can see they're now trying to like make this muddied in this area by saying, okay, if you ask what country they're in, they're more likely in like the combination of all the German cities. So that'd be a 60% in one of the German cities, but if you're asking specifically what city they're in, it's more likely they're in London. Yeah. That means they're always logged through conditional logic. Yeah, but this is the reason I agreed to read this paper, because they're not doing crazy logic. It's just, this was just a conjunction or a modus ponens, which is just an if-then statement, which you should be able to handle. Socknow says, I think that this is going to shock the writer, but he needs to talk to Hispanics about the subjunctive there's logic, belief, and unbelief, LMFAO. Yeah. Well, again, they're trying to use the most basic of logical examples, which is just conjunction, and then also modus ponens. So everyone has modus ponens, everyone has conjunction, but like, yes, if they want to be, comprehensive, they'd say something different. But again, these are all hand wavy arguments now. This is all set up. Just so, like, you have to realize what's going on. They're setting up all these arguments to then criticize them later. Laughing's like, I don't enjoy it, but handle it if only your one logic course. Yeah. You have to know what they're saying, because I think Frank is actually right here. They're being inaccurate, and then now they're combining inaccuracies with what people say. And it's like, well, how can you derive conclusions from inaccurate other statements? Well, that's very hard to do, because if they're being inaccurate over there, then you start mixing the inaccuracies together using logic, you're just going to get inaccurate conclusions. Yeah. So it is nevertheless impossible to hear a belief in the conjunction as rational. I believe Bond is in Germany and in London. Yeah, because if you ask what country they're most likely in, you say Germany. If you ask what city they're most likely in, then they're London. So you can't both be in London and Germany. But again, we're using different standards of evaluation at this point. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't get any more accurate. You're only going to get things that are less accurate if you keep mixing inaccuracies and logic together. Lackman says its soundness isn't bound to its validity if you're recalling your jargon correctly. No, soundness is truth plus validity. Validity is just reasoning according to the rules. Soundness is truth of the premises and reasoning according to the rules. So validity is, soundness is bound to validity. Yep. Sockno says, I would rather support some formal logic here. Like it is terrible, I think, that if you add dirt to water, it's going to get muddy. The same with logic. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But this is what happens. If you start talking about different standards, like cities versus countries, you've got different standards. And if you start making combinations of this, you get yourself into contradiction. That's not a crazy statement. All right. Impressively, Holguin proposes a theory that can accommodate all of our judgments concerning all these statements. Holguin claims beliefs are question sensitive and that one can rationally believe something with respect to a question if and only if that thing follows from one's best guess regarding that question. Okay, so they're relativizing. So the answer is your best guessed answer relative to the question. So now they're going to do some fancy philosophy speak. Let W be our set of worlds, proposition P be a subset of W, S be our agent, E a proposition, S is total evidence, and C be S is probability, coherent credence function, which is certain of E. So you're getting a set of outcomes. You have different evidence for each outcome, and then you're choosing the one outcome you best think on the question. That's all that gets said there. So a question is a partition of all those worlds. Yeah, it's a subset of all the outcome situations. So, Dame Cameron sounds like algebra. It is. It's called Boolean. Like, logic can be described in a bunch of different ways. Boolean algebra is a form of logic. So it's an algebra of two values, true and false. It is algebra, basically. Frank says they're question sensitive because the question keeps the information in that shorthand I believe P throws away. Yes, some of the information, yeah. So, I don't know where the author is exactly going with this yet, but like everything's going to be question sensitive. Questions are actually, you can do a logic of questions. Questions themselves are structures that sort of partition off the kinds of answers that they allow. So if I ask, what were you doing today? Like it's a what question. There are certain kinds of answers that will like suffice as questions. You don't give me an answer 3 o'clock. If I ask what were you doing today, I didn't say when were you doing it. I said what were you doing it. So if I ask you when you're doing it, then I need a time. What you're doing is more of an action. If I say how were you doing it, well then you say with a tool, with a car, whatever it is. So there are different structures even within the logic of questions. So yeah. Everything's going to be question sensitive. That's right. And this author is just kind of, waxing on this. So they're calling a partition of the worlds, a partition of the possible evidence and outcomes. All right. For each context of attribution, we assume there is one question under discussion, which determines the referent of thinks, and believes. So there's one thing we're asking and then what you believe the answer to be. So there's a little thing called best guess to the question. The blah, blah, blah. Okay, and you assign the greatest probability of all the answers you have to your best guess. So S is rationally permitted to believe the question if and only if the best guess entails the outcome. So if your best guess entails some resultant thing, then you are allowed to believe that resultant thing because your best guess is okay. That's all they're saying is that when you are answering something, then the logical entailments from the answer to that question, your best guessed answer, also follow. So this is the best guess account. Best guess account satisfies the data regarding 1 and 2. One is permitted to believe something despite having a low belief in it, is if it is jointly entailed by one's best guess and evidence. Explaining the other outcomes is more subtle. The best guess account identifies a unique, strongest proposition one can permissibly believe. What one can permissibly believe is deductively closed with respect to the question, since one can believe the thing that is derived by your best guess account. So why all the others sound bad and some of them sound good? Because they only sound good with respect to different questions. With respect to what country Bond is in, 5 sounds good, but the city one sounds bad. With respect to what city Bond is in, the city question answer sounds good, but 5 sounds bad, which was the country answer. Apparent failures of closure are merely cross-contextual failures. So far so good. Trouble arises when we consider beliefs and conditionals. And so, yeah, there's nothing too crazy here. Like, cross-context failures are... This is like always. If I ask you for what you were doing and you answer the time, you made a category mistake. But that's the same thing that this author is saying, just with regard to probabilities. If you ask a probability of one thing, but you give me the probability of something else, well, that's a category mistake. That's all. So, I know this is a little bit of analytic bullshit, but yeah. Okay. Conditionals. We often refrain from giving categorical answers to questions instead of only stating what we think given some condition. Suppose City will play United, but very British. City will play United, but there's doubt concerning the fitness of City's star striker, Haaland. If asked whether United will win, I may refrain from offering a categorical opinion and simply assert, I believe that if Haaland starts, United will lose. At all costs money. AI excels at that. Yeah. Well, this is one of these reasons why this is getting published nowadays, is because this is the sort of thing where it is relevant to current tech. So yeah. Frank says everything sounds good to Frank. It's just that Hallwin, whatever, is arguing for a silly use of language. Yeah. That's what I was saying too. It's like they are... Well, when they actually got to this best guess analysis, it makes some sense, like what they were actually getting at. There was loose speak, but then they were clever about it and said, look, the best guess actually works. And so that's entirely fair. Answering questions you didn't ask or giving one for a question entirely unrelated to the topic, that's fair. It all costs money. Viper says, analytic bullshit was one of the rejected potential names for philosophy roulette. It may have been. I don't remember. That's a long time ago now. Norwegian closer to Haalund. Yeah. I knew I missaid that. I apologize. Dame says, probably Manchester City versus Man United Football Club is your guess. Well, that's what I was thinking too. It's like, this is a very British thing. And one of the interesting things about this paper is Analysis, the journal where this was published, is a British publication. And I wonder if this is a little virtue signaling, like I'm in Oxford. But of course, this person isn't in Oxford, they're in MIT. But like, this might be a little virtue signaling because, you aren't supposed to favor people on non-academic or non-philosophical topics. But in doing this, it definitely signals Britain. And so I wonder if you're not supposed to play favorites, but they might have been playing favorites. You like the football too? Yeah, right to the audience. Yeah, exactly. Vipers, MIT guy, but the fact that they came out of Oxford signals British. Okay, these beliefs and conditionals look as weak as regular beliefs. So I don't know this, but I believe that if Haaland starts, United will lose. Oh, I'm not sure of this, but I believe that if Haaland starts, United will lose. Okay, that's a very, very weak statement. I think it's if this, then maybe that. Yeah. But you can say this. That's why you can see the little check here, as opposed to the hashtag. All right, moreover, we often use our beliefs and conditionals to reason towards further conclusions. I think that if Haaland starts, City will win. If he's injured, then I think United will at most get a draw. Either way, then I don't think United will win. Such reasoning is essential when answering to questions under discussion. To the question under discussion, fail to have salient probabilities. Finally, one can felicity hedge a belief by asserting it in conjunction with a belief in a conditional whose consequent conflicts with the hedged belief. So 11. I believe United will win. Nevertheless, I believe that if Holland starts, United will lose. Yeah. So you can say they're going to win, but if this low probability thing happens, then they will lose. That mostly makes sense. Because again, it's like if the 60% chance thing, then they're going to win. But if there's low percentage chance thing, then they lose. Like, yeah. MIT guy is a Man City fan. That's what it looks like. Applying the methodology in section 2, our theory of weak belief ought to accommodate this data. Assuming belief in conditionals are beliefs in propositions, it's easy to apply the best guess analysis. S is permitted to believe the question a condition. Believe Q a conditional if and only if it is entailed by the best guess analysis. Consider a simple example. 6-sided die. Alice and Bob will roll a fair 6-sided die. Alice wins if it lands on 1 to 4. Bob wins if it lands on 5 or 6. At all cost money, I believe this author has a thing for the girl named Felicity. Unfortunately, I've read a bunch of stuff in this area for dumb reasons a few years ago. That's just how they call sentences that they think sound right versus questions they don't think they sound bad. So they say felicitous if it sounds good to your ear, and unfelicitous or infelicitous if it sounds bad. But yeah, I get the joke, but it is a technical term in this area of philosophy to say the sentence is felicitous, which means sounds like good English, as opposed to infelicitous, which sounds like it's contradictory or sounds like bad English or something like that. The famous Manchester prostitute Felicity Hedge. Yeah, that phrasing threw me off. Kerry Russell. Kerry Russell's great. Laughing Jesus says, I must now disregard anything to be argued by this guy since he clearly lacks faculty to be a City fan. Yes, I'm salty United fan. Why do you ask? Yeah. Well, let's just assume that he's virtue signaling that he's from England, and that's the only reason he used these examples. Okay. So, Alice wins if it's 1 to 4. Bob wins if it's 5 to 6 on a 6-sided die. So, no matter the question under discussion, the best guess analysis makes an implausible prediction here. First, suppose the question under discussion is who will win. Assuming S's evidence offers no relevant information beyond what's specified, since Alice is a 2/3 likely win, Alice will win, then the best guess is Alice will win, meaning the best guess analysis desirably predicts the following expressed belief is rational for S. I think Alice will win. Frank says, shouldn't 13 be, I think if the die lands greater than 3, I think that Bob will win. I haven't got to 13 yet, but I'll get there in a sec. Okay, now consider what conditional S is permitted to believe with respect to who. If the die lands greater than 3, the probabilities are reversed. Bob is now 2/3 likely to win. Accordingly, the belief expressed in 13 looks rational. I think that if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. Okay, so what you're doing, Frank, is there's something called transparency in logic and language, and you put the I think on the inside clause in front of Bob will win, and the author moved it out to the front. You, Frank, are probably right that the author did something a little sneaky there. I don't know if it will matter in the long run here, but they're using, I think, as transparent as governing like the whole statement as opposed to the specific clause. I suspect that they're actually going to make hay with this. Question who? TNG Next Generation Season 2 Episode 16. Yeah, fuck you. He's annoying. Okay, but like, yeah, Frank, not Bob on here. Like, what Frank is saying, like, to be more accurate, this should actually be right there to the example. Yeah, like, yes. I don't know if it's going to make a difference in the logic, but, like, it's a little bit sneaky. Okay. Like, I think if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. And you have to think of it, if the die lands greater than 3, then I think Bob will win. But they're being a little bit unclear about that. And if you assume that wherever you put I think is it's okay by pragmatics, then it's pragmatically okay, even if it's not 100% clear. Okay, indeed, this judgment is on solid ground as the foundational judgment in support of weak belief 1 and 2. Yet the best guess analysis predicts 13 is rational only if S is best guess, Alice will win, and tells if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. No sensible theory of indicative conditionals allows for this entailment. The world in which the die lands 4 is a world in which Alice wins, yet if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win has a true antecedent and false consequent, which any sensible theory of conditionals will take as sufficient for its falsity at that world. Best guess analysis therefore predicts 13 expresses an irrational belief. Yeah, so there is a question about exactly what is the referent going on here. Like, what are we referring to? So are we referring if the die lands greater than 3, that means if it's 4, 5, or 6, Bob will win. But that also doesn't mean that we're not still counting 1 through 6. It just means that if we are ignoring all the rolls of any time the die rolls 1, 2, or 3, then those don't count. So again, what exactly does the statement mean then? And so, yeah, this is now being a problem. Because Alice will win if you're talking about all 6, like you're rolling 1 to 6, win 2/3. Alice will win 2/3 of the time. And then if the die lands greater than 3, now are we referring to when it could land on all of them, or only the times that we're talking about when it lands greater than 3? And so we don't actually have a clear understanding of which are like legal roles when this sort of statement is being made. So it definitely is some unclarity going on, or unclarity. Okay, so this could just again be question relativity going on here. All right, perhaps the best guess analysis does better when shifting the question under discussion to a question about a conditional question 3 prime. If the die lands greater than 3, Bob wins. If the die lands greater than 3, Alice wins. I don't know what that is. Intuitively, who will win if the die lands greater than 3? Alright, so maybe they're trying to clarify the question under discussion here. Deriving what one's best guess with respect to this question is requires making controversial assumption about the probability of conditionals. To sidestep this, I'll charitably assume that the best guess is if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win, delivering the result that the belief expressed in 13 is rational. Yeah, it all costs money. Usually these are idealized dice that cannot land in any, they call them fair. And so there is only the 6 options and nothing else. So yeah. Did it just become a D&D stream? Yes. Okay, the problem is that with respect to the question of greater than 3, the belief expressed in 12 is now irrational. Yeah, so if you are restricting the question is to only ones that are greater than 3 and that, then you can't say that the die is going to land, like the whole 6 now makes sense. The whole 6 options. So the best guess analysis predicts S permissibly believes that the question greater than 3, Alice will win, if it is entailed by if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. Yeah, so if you're partitioning what you're allowed to do, then it doesn't make sense if you're on the whole selection of options, if you're only looking at the very narrow slice. Again, no sensible theory of indicative conditionals will predict this. This entailment can only hold if the conditional is false at worlds in which the die lands 5 or 6, since those are worlds in which Alice does not win. That cannot happen on theories for which the truth of an antecedent and consequent at a world is sufficient for the truth of the corresponding conditional at that world, such as according to the theory of Stalnaker 1968. Alright, now we're just doing like analytic dick sucking. There's no reason to actually reference like old fucking theories of this. No one's questioning that at the moment. And whilst theories that demand more for the truth of a conditional can consistently model the required entailment, such models are bizarre. Best guess analysis predicts 13 expresses a rational belief only at the cost of no longer predicting the same about 12. Yeah, so if you set up 2 different questions under analysis that require partitioning the outcomes in different ways, you will not be able to get them to be like mutually consistent. It's just because you are asking different questions at different times. That's okay, I guess. Like, again, you're just breaking up the sections that you're allowed to look at. So one allows you to look at all 1 through 6 rolls. The other one only allows you to look at 4, 5, and 6. Fine. All right. I will now consider 2 replies to my argument so far. The first reply attempts to fully utilize Holguin's question-sensitive framework. And that's what I was saying. Maybe you're just like breaking this up in weird ways. The second modifies the best guess analysis by proposing that rational beliefs in conditionals are determined by corresponding conditional probabilities. All right, so question sensitivity. Perhaps when determining whether an agent is rational to believe P, we tend to assess this with respect to the question under discussion, or some question under discussion for which P is a complete answer. If so, the best guess analysis makes the correct prediction. S permissibly believes both if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win with respect to the greater than 3 only, and S permissibly believes Alice will win with respect to just all 6. And all I've said above is a feature, not a bug of BGA. So yeah, this is exactly what I was saying, is that if you are picking the question under in this way, then you're all right. What do we got? Okay, so that was for something else. Okay. Alright, 2 objections. First, 12 and 13 sound good not only in isolation but also within the same breath. The effect is similar to the hedging assertion of 11. So, 14. I think Alice will win. Nevertheless, I think that if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. Okay. That seems like just both of the... That just sounds like shifting the question under discussion. Yet, there is no question under discussion where BGA predicts this conjunction of beliefs as permissible. No, I straight up disagree with this. You are shifting the question under discussion mid-sentence. Of course, there's no single question under discussion where you can do 2 things at once, but you can shift question under discussion mid-sentence. There's no problem with that. That's exactly what you did with the semicolon. That's what the semicolon is doing, is giving a slightly, you're reconsidering what you were talking about. That's what semicolons do. There's a semicolon there. That's what it does. Right here, semicolon. Okay. All right, we've already seen neither question win nor question greater than 3 allow for both beliefs expressed in 14 to be rational. A further contender is the conjunctive question, so asking both at the same time. Who will win and who will win if the die lands greater than 3? However, for this question, it's not even obvious either belief counts as rational by the best guess analysis. Since the details are thorny, requiring us to make concrete assumptions about probabilities of conditional, I've placed them in the following footnote. So they just went and fucking punted. They punted from up here down to here, and it's like very fucking long. So someone called them out, probably a referee was like, yeah, you're just shifting, and now they're trying to, like, punt all the way to here. And I do not feel like reading all of this, but I find their response not that great so far. Reviewer 2, exactly. So this is how I feel like it, because clear they were writing their paper, someone brought something up, and then this is a fucking massive, because the footnote keeps going. The footnote comes down to all the way over here as well. They couldn't even get the footnote on one page. So it's like, I'm not like, this is like, maybe they're right, but I feel like you're shifting within the context of even that one sentence. It's like, is that really... Just because you can't phrase a question like that doesn't mean you can't context shift in your answer. Yeah. Oh boy, we're changing football codes? Exactly, Dame Karen. Like, things are a little worrisome right there. Okay. And so now they're just like moving right along. Like, fuck it. You have to go read the long footnote. Second, if assessing a belief in a conditional requires changing the question under discussion, we generate a conflict with our use of conditionals in reasoning as with 10. If assessing a conditional requires changing the question under discussion, which in turn requires changing the semantic values of thinks and believes, we cannot vindicate this practice. If question under discussion is the first one, the fact that I rationally think something else is that some conditional is true is just irrelevant to what I think about the first question. Yeah, this is fair. Like, the conditional itself is not changing the question under discussion. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. But like, if you are just having a conditional in a statement, that could be part of your answer. That shouldn't be changing the question under discussion on its own. But like, I agree with this, but this doesn't actually answer the main question, which they have this giant fucking footnote about. At all cost money says, I know 2 + 3 = 5 better than me. This is a story about how my life got flipped upside down. Now let's talk about logical order of operations. Yeah. I mean, you're claiming that this is an appeal to authority, and it's like that's what they're doing down here. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm looking at this big footnote, and it does seem like it's a hand wave, like you're saying. It's kind of like, oh yeah, look at my references and like all this other stuff. But I think the answer is simple. It's just that you're answering multiple questions under discussion above, and it's not just that you're conjuncting, like it's not just a conjunction, but like, yeah, they're like, since the details are thorny, it's like weird. So yeah. And this also, I think, goes back to Frank's point about where they moved the I think. Because when you have the presupposition of something happens, then you're assuming that to be certain. So if you say like, if this were to happen, then something else would happen. Even if that thing that you're assuming is very low probability, that doesn't matter. In the case that happens, then it happens 100% of the time. It's 100%, like it's 30% of the time, but in that 30% of the time, it happens 100% of the time. So I feel like they're hedging on that, and the way they phrased it is actually, like, and Frank pointed this out earlier, like it made it a little unclear, because when you say a hypothetical of something, if this were to happen, even if it's a low probability, when you are in that hypothetical world, it has already happened. It is true in that world. So yeah, and that's a subtle point. I don't think people recognize that enough. Even if there's a low probability thing, when you start saying, if it happens, when you make that assumption, you are in that world where it happened. You're in that low probability world. You have stepped into it. Okay. A natural reply to this objection is to posit bridge principles, allowing that one can permissibly think the first question to impact what is permissible to think about another question. However, doing so will undermine what made positing question sensitivity initially attractive. Yeah, so if you start thinking like you can muddle the waters, I mean, they're right about this. Recall the discussion of all the other stuff above. We require a substantive independence between what one can permissibly think with respect to different questions in order to avoid predicting that the belief expressed in 7 can ever be rational. It's not obvious what independently motivated bridge principles will allow for one to rationally obtain the belief 14 from the belief in 12 and 13, yet prevent one likewise obtaining belief in 7 from belief in 5 and 6. Yeah, so if you want to start saying that asking one question leads to another, then yeah, it's going to get messy as fuck. Adam says, I think it's the semantic changes in terms and thus the true values. So we are talking about two different questions. Each may have certain outcomes, but if the murky questions are not related, then the A-leaf is fuzzy and is a fuzzy collection of beliefs. Yeah, see, I don't take that I think modally in this sense. Like, I think, okay, you take one situation and then you're talking about that, then you can shift to a different situation. Now that secondary situation may be very low percentage, like low probability, but when you're in that, you have to take all the things that were low probability in the first situation as already true, and so then you're there. I don't think it's a fuzzy situation, because when you are talking about the time when I won the lottery, well, then what do you do when you win the lottery? You don't talk about it like, oh, if I won the lottery, then I don't know what I'd do because I'm poor now. No, if you won the lottery, then you're not poor, then you have all that money. And so it's like, even though it's not fuzzy at all, it's like I have the money in the situation where I won the lottery. I don't find that I don't find that confusing. It's like you just assume you have that money, even though it's a very low probability, seeing as I usually don't play the lottery, so I can't win. But yeah, I completely agree. The semantics definitely changes the terms, but how does it change the terms is important here. Yeah. If the murky questions are not related. Yeah, I don't know exactly what you mean by the murky questions are not related, though. Frank says, I think he accepted casual meanings for their casual phrasing in 5 to 7, but then went all strict when the casual phrasing must mean in 12 to 14. Oh, thank you, Dame Karen. Yeah, I am at 600 fucking papers read. And I've not ever celebrated any big numbers. I should do something one day. Yeah, Frank, I find this to be slightly irritating, is that they were formal sometimes and informal at other times, and then we just have to take their word for it. So yeah, this is Philosophy Roulette 600, and a good, like, I only lost a few over the years, so there's most of this has been recorded on YouTube, and I have like hard copies now. Thanks Twitch for forcing us all to download all of our back catalogs. But yeah, all right, conditional probabilities. So, this reply attempts to make the correct prediction when concerning which beliefs in conditionals are rational, all with respect to a single question under discussion. Okay, so no shifting anymore. Just one single question under discussion. All right, so where pipe dot is S's conditional credence function.
I salute you.
Thanks for the follow, Diogenes. So S is conditional credence function, C, Q given P. So these are just like your normal Bayesian sort of probabilities. C, boobs. Where? I don't see any boobs. I like boobs. Okay, so yeah, Q given P. For any P such that P is greater, the likelihood of P is greater than 0, and the best guess is that of just the conditional given P given nothing, assigns the highest probability or the union of cells with the highest probability, and P implies Q picks out the proposition expressed by if P, Q relative to the context. Oh, thank you, Frank. I did not know. Fair enough. Yes. Yeah. Alrighty. I am not a punny man. Sometimes I am. But like, you know, I can only do so much at once, Diogenes. I can only do so much. Yeah. Alright, conditional best guess analysis. So this is C best guess, CBGA. S is rational and permitted to believe something. P if Q, if and only if the best guess entails the Q. So yeah, so you have to do the probability and then the entailment works under the best guess. For the person who wrote the paper on puns, yeah, I am, you know, I am only so clever. So I can only do so much at once. So yeah. And you know, streamer brain. But yeah, I try. I don't get all of them. And the question is, does that boob even count as a pun? That would be more like an emoji. So like, seriously, it's not a pun. It's more like an emoji boob or emoticon boob. Like, get your internet lingo right. Emoticon boob. No worries, Diogenes. Welcome in. Yeah, good name too. We like Diogenes here. Yeah. ASCII and titties. What's up, K-Pars? Exactly. I like my ASCII. Oh, speaking of just something hilarious from years ago. So you can get like there's packs of old video games you can download online. These old arcade games. There's something called MAME. It's kind of like a reconstruction of old arcade boxes, and there's like all these ancient video games and arcades. And so I downloaded an old pack of games many, many years ago, and included in them were some like these Japanese bar games. And so there's like 8-bit dancing girls like taking their clothes off in some of them, and you're just like, 8-bit boobs, it's ridiculous. So yeah, but it's interesting, like these old like bar games. Yeah, MAME, multiple arcade machine emulator. Thank you. I was trying to remember the acronym and I just couldn't do it. But yeah, MAME is really cool. Okay, so assuming any proposition Q is equivalent to the truth implies Q, then T is where T is the tautology. CBGA, that's conditional best guess account, addresses both what conditional and categorical propositions can permissibly believe. All right, so what do you respect to the questions above? So the conditional best guess analysis desirably predicts the belief that 3, 12 to 14 are rational. What about, so this is the best guess. It means Alice will win, meaning one is permitted to believe Alice will win, yet where the greater than 3, if you're only looking at a dice roll greater than 3, stands for the die landing greater than 3, then Bob will win, meaning one is, with respect to the question win, also permitted to believe if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. However, in predicting all of these things, CBG goes out of the frying pan and into the fire. Permissible beliefs now fail to be closed over entailment in various ways. So, if P implies Q and jointly, and not Q jointly entails not P. Yeah, so, alright, so this is just like basic logic. If not Q, then not P is the same as saying if P, then Q under classical propositional logic. Alright, in 6-sided die, whilst S can permissibly believe Alice will win, and if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win, S cannot permissibly believe the die will land greater than 3. CBGA has this verdict since the best guess analysis is consistent with the die landing on 4. Hence, S's permissible beliefs are not closed under modus tollens. Okay, yeah. K-Bars, this paper seems fun but misleading. You have a statistics brain. You might like this one better. This is some probabilistic analysis of trying to parse how to explain like what belief in a probabilistic way. Frank says, if the die rolls are in 3, I think Bob will win. Simply isn't the same as saying greater than 3 entails Bob winning. They translate incorrectly. Yeah. I'm not loving this. The pretending the casual description was formal. Yeah. So if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win. So this is what Frank is alluding to right here. Because this is never like saying this and then like saying the question here is different. So it's not the same thing to do a conditional versus the question. Yeah. It added the I think part. Yeah. And this is the issue, is that exactly what is being under, yeah, that exactly, K-Pars. What exactly is under question here? And I think they're muddling it a bit. I'm trying to like see if I can understand exactly what they're saying, but I'm not entirely sure. No, so wait, am I in the wrong spot? Yeah. Okay. The die will land greater than 3. Well, of course you cannot permissibly... We don't know if the die will land greater than 3. It's a hypothetical. So it's interesting that this is... Yeah. But... They're muddling it. This is exactly what's going on here. Because they're doing a hypothetical. They're saying, okay, in this sort of question, that... But then they're trying to flip it around and say, well, what if that is the case? Well, so no, that was a hypothetical. This is not, we're not assuming this. It's a hypothetical, but then there's flipping it around. So we are muddling these sort of structural properties here, saying, look, okay, we're going to take a hypothetical, but then they're going to say, all right, this is a material conditional. Yeah. You resubbed in your intermediate crash for the last 5 minutes. Oh, what's up? It's a sign. Congrats on 600. Thank you. I appreciate the resub. I didn't see it. It didn't come up, but thank you. Did it come up? Let's see. Oh, shit. Yeah, it didn't come up. So, yeah. Internet. Thank you, Barude. Oh, actually, you know what we could do? We could give Barude a shout out. Barude is also a philosopher streamer. And if you are interested in more philosophical content, extremely different from what I'm reading right now, because Barude is a continental philosopher working on the philosophy of charisma, go check him out. He's writing his PhD, I think, at the moment, and he's dealing with more interesting topics like the Catholic Church and how it interacts with other things, because they're using ideas that bring people in. What is it for an idea to bring people in? Wouldn't you like to know? No letters next to numbers in your papers, exactly. You call Australians continental? Well, I call certain philosophy continental. And you can be anywhere in the world and work on that kind of philosophy. So, yes. Barude is a continental philosopher, even though his continent is completely different. Yes. I also am on a continent. I'm in North America. But yeah. Yeah. So the term continental is it's not geographic, or historically it was kind of geographic for certain style of philosophy that happened in a certain area, but has, it's traveled. All right. Yeah, so the question is, if you start flipping stuff around, saying, well, look, if they won, then the die landed greater than 3, but you're not supposed to believe that. That was supposed to be a hypothetical. So I feel like what we're doing here is we're confusing modal possibilities with conditionals. And so that seems like what's going on. Viper says, don't be the smallest continent, be the biggest island. Yeah. All right, more trouble. So the conditional best guess analysis predicts S's beliefs are not closed under this thing. Proof by cases. If P or P1 or P2 is a tautology, then P1 implies Q and P2 and P2 implies Q will jointly entail Q. So consider a 10-sided die. Alice, Bob, and Charlie are rolling a fair 10-sided die. Alice wins if it lands 1 to 3, Bob if 4 to 7, Charlie if it lands 8 to 10. Assuming S's credences conform to the chances respecting to win, in this case Alice will win, Bob will win, Charlie will win, CBGA tells us that S is permitted to believe that if the die rate lands greater than 5, Alice will win, and if the die does not land greater than 5, Charlie will win, yet S is not permitted to believe that Bob will lose. Indeed, CBGA predicts that one can believe Bob will win. So if it does not land greater than 5, wait. Yeah, so you can break this up in different ways to always be like, all right, the other people, this is gerrymandering. So what they did was they gerrymandered this case so that by splitting up the different sections, Bob will never have a bigger possibility of winning, even though they have a 4 to 7 chance. They have a 3 out of 10 chance to win. So it's, yeah. Can you continent as a continental? I don't know. This is approaching a D&D stream. Yeah, we're rolling die. So yeah. Someone says, my understanding is that the continental terminology was invented to express dislike of the French. I did not know that if that's the case, but I mean, it was designed to talk about a certain style of philosophy that the French and the Germans, I think, were mostly doing. Maybe some of the Italians too. But like that was why it was opposed to the people on the British Isles who were doing different philosophy. So there was more analytic stuff in England and more of this non-analytic stuff on the continent. And so it got the name continental and analytic. What's up, DeMarshall? How you doing? Yes, incontinental. Incontinent, yeah. All right, so if you gerrymander the cases, then yeah, depending on how you ask the question, Bob might not win. But again, what's the question under discussion? In the gerrymandered case, Bob has the least likelihood of win, even though on the overall case, Bob has a very good chance to win. So I'm a little bit afraid that they have gerrymandered the questions under discussion to make it seem like the wrong options coming out. Okay. Maybe I'm missing something in how they are parsing this, but, it just seems like, again, they're shifting the question under discussion. Baruda says US and UK versus Europe, basically. Yeah. And it's unfair because, again, these are historical things. So these don't actually match up to anything anymore because there's plenty of analytic philosophers in the European continent and plenty of, not plenty, but there are some continental philosophers scattered all over the UK and the United States. So these are historical and they're just names at this point. They don't actually hold a lot of, have any geographic meaning anymore. Okay. All right, similar arguments apply to further principles that the author does not have space to discuss. Not even closure under most opponents survives. Allowing Q is itself to be a conditional, S may believe permissibly that P and P implies Q without believing Q. Yeah. But I mean, if it's a hypothetical, then you're actually saying suppose something that feels much more like a possibility term than not a possibility term. And so this is very, very worrisome because I feel like they're mixing up modal concepts of possibility and necessity with the material conditional, and you have to be clear about that. Like if you're saying, look, if this happens then that happens, fine, but then if you're saying if in the possible world or the possible situation or in a situation where this happens, you're saying something different. You're saying assume it to be the case, then what happens? And it's a different sort of reasoning going on. It's a categorical reasoning. It's more like, all right, we're going to set this aside. You're not just saying in the case where you were discussing this stuff, you're saying in the modal situation, you're in the world already. Frank says, I reckon Aris would love the phrase in continental philosophy. He would. Yeah. All right. These are bad results for two reasons. First, theories of weak belief are motivated, as in section 2, by data concerning what belief ascriptions sound good or bad. As we saw with 3 and 4, ascriptions of belief that fail to be deductively closed generally sound bad. The same is true with the above failures of closure. So 15, and this is meant to sound bad. I think that if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win, and I think Bob won't win. But I wouldn't say that I think the die won't land greater than 3. Yeah, again, we're shifting what we're talking about in the sentence, and if you don't know what you mean to be talking about, it sounds terrible. All right, 16. And I think that if the die lands greater than 5, Charlie will win. Otherwise, I think Alice will win. Nevertheless, I think Bob will take it. Yeah, because again, in that second example, if you partition from 1 to 5 and 5 and 6 to 10, then there's different options. You're gerrymandering. But again, on the whole selection, then Bob has a very good chance of winning. He has a belief in PP, you said? Yeah, that's right. PP. Okay. Meanwhile, since the utterances of 12 to 14 sound good, as do similar sentences regarding 10-sided die, like I think that if the die lands greater than 5, Charlie will win, it becomes impossible for the proponent of weak belief to capture all the data that was initially intended to motivate their theory, no matter what fix to BGA, the best guess account we offer. And see, this is the thing. We have to keep in mind that the author is attacking just this weak belief where we have a theory of what it is to say, well, I don't know if something is the case. It just means I only have a low percentage belief that it is going to happen. All right. Second, as with 10, it is common practice to give conditional answers to questions to aid reasoning towards a conclusion. Such reasoning will make use of principles like modus tollens and proof by cases. The more principles of conditional logic we contravene, the harder it is to vindicate this essential practice of ours. All right, the puzzle. My discussion focused on Holguin's theory of weak belief and amendments to it. However, the puzzle is in fact quite general. On the one hand, just as it seems one can rationally have weak beliefs, it seems one can rationally have weak beliefs in conditionals. These judgments include, for example, that in 6-sided die, one can rationally believe if the die lands greater than 3, Bob will win, and that in 10-sided die, one can rationally believe if the die lands on 5 or less, Alice will win. Call the desiderata for a theory to predict these weak beliefs in conditionals as conditional weakness. Conditional logic, no. DeMarshall, this is just bog standard propositional logic where we have weak beliefs in certain statements. So that just means we believe less than half the time that this will hold. So this author is taking issue with that's what we mean when we say we believe something is just that it has a chance less than 50% or it's not 100%. Where did Charlie come from? Where's Charlie? Charlie was one of the people in the 10-sided die example. Dame Karen. K-Par says, yes, but there's reasoning UMP under the Neiman-Pearson lemma. I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what Neiman-Pearson is. Yeah, Charlie is this dude in the 10-sided case. Where's 10-sided case? Yeah, see, Charlie's here. Yeah, we're just talking about conditionals in propositional logic. Yeah. Okay, we were dealing with Alice and Bob, and all of a sudden Charlie was winning. Yeah, so Alice wins 1 to 3, Bob wins 4 to 7, and Charlie wins 8, 9, and 10. So, yeah. So, it's Bob has the 40% and Alice and Charlie have 30% each. And so overall, Bob should win. But if you break it up 1 to 5 and 5 to 10, then Bob's chances get split in half on each of those cases. So you gerrymander him out of winning. Yeah, exactly. It all costs money. Where'd Felicity go? All right. On the other hand, it is a common rational practice of ours to use beliefs in conditionals to draw further conclusions. Indeed, expressions of belief that demonstrate not to have drawn obvious inferences from propositions one already believes sound patently irrational. Call the desiderata for a theory to respect these facts closure. The puzzle is that we cannot have both conditional weakness and closure. This is demonstrated by the above cases, 6-sided die and 10-sided die. As soon as we have a theory that allows an agent to rationally believe the relevant conditionals, we have a theory that violates principles of conditional logic like modus tollens and proof by cases. Can we give up conditional weakness? Only if we have some pragmatic explanation why weak beliefs in conditional sound but in fact are not rational. I cannot see what such an explanation could look like that would not undermine the original data supporting rational weak belief. Can we give up closure? Again, only if we have some pragmatic story why expressions of belief that fail to be deductively closed sound irrational even though they needn't be. Moreover, to vindicate our common practices of using beliefs in conditionals to deduce further conclusions, we need to posit restricted closure principles that allow agents to reason with conditionals in most cases. Whilst I do not have a knockdown argument, this cannot be done. I cannot see what the requisite pragmatic story or restricted closure principle would look like. Where did this get published? This got published in Analysis, which is an excellent journal that generally publishes this sort of like short, self-contained, technical philosophy. I have a paper in Analysis. It's like my best publication. But this also drives me fucking bonkers. Yeah, Dame Karen says, I'm sure she'll be winning the D20. So yeah, this is it for this paper. Again, they were mostly attacking a certain version of a theory of belief, saying a belief that describes your belief as a low probability thing. So, yeah. But as always, now we rate the paper. If you thought this was fun and made your brain dance, give it a brain dance. If you thought it had existential artistic drama, not this paper, clearly. Nog Scream, Ouroboros, Nagoro for a deep arrangement ideas. And as always, spelling and capitalization do matter. Nog Navel for navel gazing, one for academics. Nog Turd, all style, no substance, don't poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. Also, you get to use the global vote yay and vote nay from Twitch, and also my vote meh. Note that anything in the green, I give an overall score, makes the score go up. Anything in the red makes it go down, and the vote meh makes everything go to the middle. So Frank gave it a nay, a navel gazing, and a grapes. Dame Karen gave it a navel gazing. Adam says, so does the author think it's possible for X to believe that Mary won, and contingently if Mary won, then Bob lost? It's still permissible to believe that without logical contradiction, that Bob won or could still win. Closure impossible. Yeah, so they would say that given this sort of weak belief scheme that takes this sort of way of describing things as fundamental, they would say this does break the logical conclusions. So they would say that. And so the argument here is that, well, you're not like, they had to do some like, we were criticizing them earlier. Well, are we shifting topic? And then I criticize them. I think they're shifting into modal possibility and stuff. I'm not entirely sure. Like, they said, look, if you just take this weak belief stuff that they started off at the beginning, where you say a belief just means that it's a low probability thing, a low credence thing, where you think it's like, less than 50% chance happening, or it's just not 100% chance, then that's how we're describing stuff. Then everything gets mucked up because you can't use it in logic like you want to. That's basically it. K-Pars, no. You can't use this theory of weak belief, is what they were saying. So if on their account they actually describe things correctly and they're not just, being clever with how they shifted everything, then yeah, you can't just assume like a straight problem with treating beliefs as weakly asserted statements. Yeah. K-Par says, man, knife, and grapes. Thank you for rating. Frank says, "This is the first time you might have done grapes. He was really confident he had something." Yeah. The real issue here is that I don't know the background theory that they're criticizing, this Holguin person. And so it feels like if I really knew the Holguin, I could really understand what they were criticizing mostly. But it also really looked like they were doing some really sneaky stuff with how they were changing the question under discussion and how they were shifting the conditionals around. Adam says, "I'd rather no modal move. I'd restrict things even more, sticking to low credence." Yeah. Laughing Jesus, navel gazing, grapes, knife, and meh. Yeah. Dame Karen says, "All cost money is justice for Felicity." Yeah, exactly. Justice for Felicity. Hey, Powers. Okay, because I get a sense of null hypothesis testing, where if the evidence for you suggests that the null is sufficiently unlikely, you cannot believe it, but dancing around that. Yeah. Vipers references the ChatGPT. Viper says, ChatGPT says, Holguin's theory of belief focuses on explaining how beliefs are formed, maintained, and justified. It emphasizes the role of evidence, coherence, and practical reasoning in shaping beliefs. According to Holguin, beliefs are not only cognitive states, but are also influenced by social and practical considerations. The theory suggests that beliefs are justified when they are supported by reliable evidence, fit within a coherent system of beliefs, and effectively guide practical action. Hey, what's up, Katie? How you doing? Yeah, we got the dancing dollies. Adam tuned in. The knife didn't work. If you can fix it, by all means do so. I'll fix it later if you don't. Yeah, see, unfortunately, ChatGPT, that is unhelpful for this case. Although I find it interesting that they had something to say on this. Vipers, it's an interesting way of going about it. But unfortunately, they didn't it is not specific enough to their theory of weak belief. Maybe you could say, well, could you tell me more about the theory of weak belief here? Because it didn't say anything about this. Otherwise, it gave some just generic statement of it. Thank you, Adam. Again, it's if we take the theory at face value, it's possible that everything in this paper was correct, but it doesn't seem like it's well argued, because again, this sort of shifty stuff was so strange. Yeah. I'm just trying to think, what do I think? This didn't get me particularly thinking. I'll say this is nog knife, but multiple knives. And what is that? Oh, okay. That's something else. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna give it 2 knives and a meh. This is just oopsie. I can't even do my own fucking emote. Yeah, the Professor's Wife X is a streamer. You can give Katie a shout out. How you doing, Katie? Go over there. Does a lot of music streams. Also some gaming. Does karaoke. So if you want chill vibes, head over the Professor's Wife X. Talks about a bunch of stuff. You can ask questions. So good times. So yeah. Also the better half of Prof for Prof. Yeah. Keepers seem to lean into notation more as a flex more than for reason. That was part of it here. But yeah, I didn't even give a nog navel. This got to get nog naveled, actually. You're right. Nog navel. This was a little bit is analytic, but they also really were trying to do stuff. All right. Viper says, so I guess it would be Holguin emphasizes that weak belief. Oh, Viper's quoting ChatGPT. He says, Holguin emphasizes that weak beliefs are not merely defective or incomplete versions of strong beliefs, but are functionally distinct. They serve important epistemic and practical purposes, particularly in areas where decisions must be made despite limited information. Rather than being dismissed as epistemically inferior, weak beliefs are considered valuable tools for navigating uncertain environments, allowing individuals to act, hypothesize, or explore possibilities even when certainty is unattainable. Additionally, Holguin's highlighting that weak beliefs can play a constructive role in inquiry and learning by maintaining flexible, less rigid stance. Individuals are more open to reconsideration, refinement, and integration of new evidence. This adaptability is especially important in scientific and philosophical exploration, where tentative hypotheses often precede more robust theories. Hogan's theory also implies that acknowledging the legitimacy of weak beliefs can lead to more nuanced assessments of epistemic justification instead of applying a binary standard of justified or unjustified. Holguin advocates for a graded approach where beliefs are evaluated based on the strength of their supporting reasons and their practical effectiveness rather than certainty alone. Yeah, ChatGPT has many thoughts, and I find actually nothing in there helpful for the current issue. And this is why I don't really use it for philosophy. Like, it's a good summary of stuff, but a lot of people say shit like this, actually. This is a whole area of literature where people say stuff like this, and it's just like, that's nice. This is an assessment of Holguin's area in the literature, and you didn't say anything specific about what we want to know about what's going on in the logic of weak beliefs, which is what this paper was about. And this is why I can't use it, because I am hyper specific about like what was the claim and what are the like implications of the claim. I don't need the background knowledge. Yeah. So yeah, K-Pars give it a navel gazing and a meh. So many thoughts. K-Pars say, okay, see how it relates to Bayes now. It's like take any prior and you can work from it. Yep. Viper says, quote, what's unique about Holguin's theory of weak belief? It's emphasis on legitimacy and practicality of utility of uncertain tentative beliefs rather than treating them as simply inferior or defective of strong beliefs. Okay. Yeah. So that's fine of like as an emphasis thing. Again, this, when you do something like that, it's like, yeah, but what's the philosophical implications? And then in this case, in this paper that we just read, we need to actually drill down on how that gets used. And that's what does it here. So it's like, okay, the idea that we have weak beliefs and that they're legitimate is good. But what was the cash value of that? Well, the cash value of that is that there's a certain credence, that is a probability that we're associating with the likelihood of these outcomes. And weak beliefs just have a low probability. This is important because then, as this paper argued, you can't use that for logic as if the logic doesn't work anymore. And so that's the issue. Now, again, where exactly is the shift going on? Is it in the weak belief literature or is it in the way we phrase the question here? I'm not entirely sure. But like, yeah, I think this author is probably right in their assessment. It's just very hard to pin it down because how probabilities work in propositional logic looks really murky at this point. All right, overall, Hogan's theory challenges conventional epistemology by presenting a positive account of weak belief, not as failing to be overcome, but as valuable functional aspects of human cognition. Fair. I mean, it's fair. You're about to give ChatGPT an A, yeah. Frank says, if you're going to make a decision, have no strong belief which is dominantly relevant, some combination of your weak beliefs will still yield a decision. That is definitely useful and valuable and functional. Yeah. The question is that anything new? And I don't think the answer is yeah. I think everyone understood that you were picking between bad options was, yeah, they're all low probability. And this has gone back hundreds of years. It's called the principle of indifference. When you can't tell the difference between options, it's indifferent, then you assign them equal probability. And this has been like known for hundreds of years, or this has been hypothesized for hundreds of years. This is how we do stuff. So I don't actually think that a whole lot has been gained. Maybe in contemporary literature, in Holguin's defense, this has been poo-pooed. We have not really been treating these weak probabilities as well as they should be. But I'm just like, did we learn anything about that? Like, was that really in question here? I don't know. Yeah, see, okay, now they're trying to ChatGPT is giving some lip now. Frank says, but even if Holguin's theory isn't very interesting, the paper did a terrible job of shooting him down. The only thing I'm slightly worried on is that maybe it did an okay job, but I just had a lot of problems with the presentation. I think that's about it. He doesn't explain why it is the case. That's what I want to know. Yeah, maybe they didn't give enough background explanation because it's just saying, look, if it's less than these probabilities and then you start doing logic on low probability things go out weird. And that's fair, but I mean, this initial stuff, I know you guys can't see behind the rating thing. The initial like question under consideration where they shifted the question. There's a cop doing something outside with the loudspeaker. I doubt you can hear it, but like it's like I just heard like some like cop being like yelling at stuff, and it's like right outside my window. What is? All right, I have no idea what's happening. I don't see like what's going on there, but yeah. Frank says, I get what you mean. Maybe Hogan is actually the source of the weirdness in this paper, transmitted the weirdness very well. I'm unfairly blaming the paper for the weirdness, but it doesn't feel like that to me. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. That's where this felt like navel gazing, like you were going to make a point here, just showing your smarts. Yeah.